You know what I find relaxing as a young person? Hearing that I've got plenty of time. No one knows what they're doing. Everyone's still figuring it out, even when they seem like they've got it figured out. You know what I find distressing? Feeling like I have to define every single aspect of my personality and how I present myself by the ripe age of 23. Hey, I'm Kate. I'm an artist and I talk about things I'm interested in. And I am here to remind you today that you don't have to be the main character or a character at all if you don't want to be. What a concept. I do think there are some good things about like main character energy or how that's proliferated across the internet, but there is some nuance that should be discussed. I'm not going to include clips of like TikTokers or people who are, I guess, presenting themselves with main character energy because A, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, and B, even if I'm seeing that as like cringe or over the top or destructive or whatever, like I don't think it's like my place to shame people. But I will be including lots of clips from my favorite online therapist, Esther Perel, because I eat up everything that woman says like the fake talkies from Trader Joe's.
It's by being with others that you get to know who you are, and not just by sitting there alone and say, who am I, who am I?
So let's start with the positives. While researching this, I didn't know that a lot of people associate like main character energy or syndrome with kind of like the Studio Ghibli style of making the mundane exceptional, and finding the beauty in that, maybe having more gratitude for the everyday moments and taking agency over your life. And I think that's ultimately very positive. There's nothing like having confidence in who you are and your boundaries as an individual, and enforcing them. You know, I very much believe in chasing your dreams, because it's true, you only have one life, so you should not live your life for other people. Very positive, very good. Yes. And I also think it's important to discuss how, I don't know if it's like a reaction from the collective toll of the pandemic, but you know, you also see these movements like the I don't dream of labor, and like people are rethinking a lot, and we have an oncoming economic crisis because people do not want to work in person anymore as much, myself included. I think it's normal for people to be reevaluating the space that they take up and like how they operate in their own lives. And if main character time is a part of that realization and a part of finding ways to be more present in your own life, then that's beautiful. That's great. However, agency and belief in yourself is not an excuse to devalue others or act as though your own pursuits are more important or prioritized to those around you. I think main character energy can quickly turn into a I am main character, therefore those around me are side characters. Or, you know, you see people, and I think this is kind of funny, but I don't, when you think about it, it's a little messed up. Characterizing others as NPCs is strange. The reality is that everybody has their own reality, and everyone's inner world is just as rich and as nuanced as yours are. But as humans, we love patterns and we love to flatten people because it makes it easier to understand and process all of the constant information we are bombarded with like the rise of AI and like Pinky Doll and ice cream so good. It is interesting, just this talk of more separation between the self and your avatar of a self. And I feel like the trope of character is kind of, maybe this is going a bit too far, but it's almost like a manifestation of your digital self, but taking some of that romanticization into the real world. And maybe that's not inherently bad, but I think it becomes a problem when you feel somewhat disappointed in yourself or feel like you're not hitting a mark because you've created this projected expectation for who you are and how you want to act in your own life. And something Miss Esther Perel is always talking about is the way that you understand yourself and become more present in your life is reflecting your experiences off of others, and relationships and seeking outside yourself, I think, is a big part of that.
You learn to love yourself in the context of your relationships with others. You know, this idea that you go first to work on yourself here and then you prepare this nice little package and you bring it to relationships, that is completely off, actually. It's interactive. You need a good amount of self-awareness, but you also need to be in relationships because it's people who help you become more aware.
There's this idea that you very much have to work on yourself first, and understand yourself first, and me before I can even think about the other things, which I think to some degree is true, but I think there's some work that you can only do within the context of others, and I think you can become a more maybe fulfilled person when you extend outside of yourself and recognize that there's only so much you can do within like the limits of yourself. Like, how many of us have been on dates or just like hung out with friends where the entire time they do not ask you any questions, or they're just talking about themselves the entire time, or I think everyone has had that experience, and it feels alienating and weird. There's like less of a exchange. I'm always talking about this. I feel like schools, you know, people are always talking about like sex ed, personal finance should be taught in schools, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But I also think like relationship dynamics, active listening, all very conflict resolution, all very, very important things that I think would make a big difference if they were upheld and prioritized from a young age. You know, like you see all these videos like how to become the main character and how to make your life like a movie. And again, I think most of these, maybe the titles are a little misleading for clickbait purposes, but I think most of them are fairly positive, just trying to let people be present, rather than give a formula for like what being a main character looks like. I do feel like there are undertones of like hyper individualism, and I do think like everyone has all the answers they need within themselves, but I do think you need other people to unlock those insights and call you out when things go too far. We only know ourselves in seeing how we relate to different situations and different people. And I also think there's like a huge cultural difference. Like this is just, I don't know, like a very Western way of like, yeah, we're the main character. And I obviously, I think it's important to pursue what you love and do that. And you are entitled to that. And you're entitled to take up space and be authentic in who you are, even if others don't agree with it. I think that's all beautiful stuff. But there is some shame, I think, that can come with building this expectation of having to live up to whatever being a main character means for you. One thing that comes to mind is it's very common, I feel like, for adult children to live with their parents in places outside of America. But here, even though there's so much economic crisis that has led to that and just other reasons, or you can even think about older adults moving in with their adult children as they age is more common outside of the US and other places. But because of our very individualistic culture, it's almost like there's a lot of shame associated with that. I feel like this main character vibe can feed into that. Your life does not need to be like a movie for it to be super fulfilling. You do not. It also, like, almost feels like a different packaging of like the hustle culture, or like the it girl, like waking up at 5 a.m. and then I have my beautiful juice and then I look out the window and think about life. Which I think are great things if that's authentic to you, but I think creating this persona of a character, or living your life like a movie, there are going to be times where you fall short, or I think for a lot of people those sorts of highly curated lifestyles are not super sustainable. I don't know, I just feel like there's a disconnect between being present in your life and performing your life in a certain way. Now, I'm just going to talk about some like general important things around community and fostering a community for yourself outside of yourself. Something that I forget about all the time is that it's much easier for us to blame other people based on their character traits and forgive ourselves thinking it was circumstantial. Let me give like a concrete example. So if someone shows up to your coffee date late, you might think, wow, they don't care about me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they don't value our time together. We tend to think very severe things about other people's intentions. Whereas if I show up to the coffee date late, it's like, oh, the train, that MTA was late again. And this is the fundamental attribution error. I don't know. I think I don't mean to be all like pop psychology and I don't know things, but I think it's a very helpful concept to remember that we are predisposed to be harsh or at least not very understanding of other people's realities. And so I think you have to be very conscious to try and do that. Like doing that takes some effort. I think you're automatically the main character in your own life. Like that's natural. I think it's also, if you've heard of the blue zones, these are like these random areas of the world where people seem to have high rates of happiness and live for very long. And one of the main common threads is that they have a very strong sense of community that is webbed between people. And I feel like sometimes we can lose that in pursuit of living our lives for the plot. I think in general there's just a lot of pressure to categorize yourself, find the right aesthetic, define yourself so quickly, especially like as a young person. We don't, I talked about this in the Olivia Rodrigo video, but there's not as much room to be like a tween or like in an awkward phase or like in young adulthood be floundering. Instead, we see people becoming super successful very quickly, or like moving into these dream apartments and finding their dream jobs and da 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 da. But I think for the vast majority of people that's not how it goes. We're also confused in figuring it out, and defining yourself as a lifelong journey that cannot be done by you alone. I also came across this word called Sonder, which I thought was nice. And it says, the profound feeling of realizing that everyone, including strangers passing in the street, has a life as complex as one's own, which they are constantly living despite one's personal lack of awareness of it. Yes. Life is challenging. Things are confusing, more than ever. And yeah, give yourself a break. You don't have to be a perfect character, because you're not one. You are a human with so many facets that cannot be defined in like one clear, beautified box. There's so much pressure to brand yourself, especially if you're in the arts, but even if you're outside of the arts, figuring out your personal brand is a weird thing, because from one day to the next you are not the same person. We are dynamic creatures, aren't we? Thanks for watching, And I hope you give yourself some slack. Continue to like be present in your own life, but just know it's okay. It's okay to not have it all figured out or know how you want to represent yourself. I certainly don't, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to discover that. But it's just that it's a discovery, and yeah, you don't have to pinpoint yourself. You can change your mind, do different things, find beauty in the mundane, do things for yourself, but also like make an effort to take interest in the people and the communities around you. Yeah. All right. I'll see you later, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Yeah. Bye.